Hey guys, so today's video is going to be about my top 10 favorite books. Now, the first book I'm going to show you is actually not on my list, but it's by the same author. And this is A Thousand Splendid Suns, but my book is The Kite Runner. I love The Kite Runner book. This book is definitely more of a girl's book than a guy's book. I have to say that. It's about this girl who just hates her life at home, just hates it. So she runs away. And she goes to this bee farm because she thinks that that is where her mother went. She's trying to find out about her mother's life because her mother died. And she goes to this bee farm, and it's just about her whole journey and what she does and how she gets to where she is. And it's kind of like a coming of age for her, and I love it. Next, I have The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey, and I can never pronounce her last name. But this is a book about a man who travels through time and his wife who does not. And I have to admit, the first 100 pages or so, not that good. But after you get past that, it's like really quick, really easy. You're like engulfed in this book. It's not something that I've read before because a lot of time travel is usually left for science fiction books, and I am not a science fiction person. But the way that the author did this makes this really interesting, and how the husband and the wife, they interact before they even realize they're gonna be married, and they, like, he's really old and she's really young because that's where he travels back to, and it's really interesting how she does it, how she kind of merges the characters. So it's like a romantic story, just with a little twist, which I like, because I like romantic stories. Next, I have 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult. And this book is about a school shooting. And it's about these two kids who go to the same high school, they're in the same grade, and they used to be best friends. But then the girl started to want to be in the popular crowd, and she did all this stuff to get popular. And the boy is really, geeky and just wants to, like, sit at home on his computer, and he gets bullied a lot, especially by her boyfriend. And she does nothing to stop it, and he goes on a rampage and shoots up the school. And it's really interesting. Like, I just picked up this book because I love Jodi Picoult, and I liked the what the back said. It's just, it talked about, like, a school shooting and how, like, the characters fit in with like, the girl, her mom is a judge, so, like, that kind of thing. And it's just talks about, do you really know somebody, which is, it's really interesting. I love that book. Next, we have The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. This is the same guy who wrote Tuesdays with Morrie. And this is about a man who dies, and he goes through and meets these 5 people, and these are 5 people that he has encountered in his life and didn't realize how he impacted them. And I don't want to give away, like, who the 5 people are, like, how they impacted him or how he impacted them, in case you haven't read it. But it's definitely one of those books that makes you think, how do you fit into other people's lives? Another really good book about that didn't make the list, but is a really good book with the same kind of ideas, 13 Reasons Why. So that's another great book, kind of talking about, like, making you think how you impact other people's lives. Okay, next we have just a little fun book. This is Once Upon a Marigold by Jean Ferris. And this I picked up from the library when I was a young teenager, and I fell in love with it. I loved the story. I loved how it was like fantasy, but it wasn't all like princess and dragons and stuff like that. It definitely had a different kind of fantasy to it, which I really liked. And it's about this boy named Christian who, at like really young, I think age 6 or something, he runs away and he goes and lives with this troll, I want to say. And he falls in love with this princess, but he can only talk to her through P-mail, which is a pigeon carrying a letter, because he lives with a troll in a cave and she lives in a castle. And it's just about how he loves her and how he wants to be with her and how he gets to that point and finding out who he really is, because he ran away when he was 6 and he has no idea who he is. So yeah, that's this. It's a really fun, easy, quick read. It's like 250 pages or something. Oh, never mind. It's like 260, 265, something like that. But trust me, it goes by fast because you're just like, oh my gosh, I just want to flip through the pages. I reread it just a couple months ago and I finished it in a day, because that's how much I love this book. Next is Catcher in the Rye. This might be one of my all-time, well, obviously it's one of my all-time favorites because it's on this list, but I think this might be like my all-time favorite book. I know that's a little weird. Catcher in the Rye seems to be on the books of a lot of killers and psychopaths, but I do really enjoy this book. Again, it was required reading for my high school for freshman year, and I remember like starting to read it and being like, what is this? I don't understand it. But then as I got more through it, I was like, oh, like I understand that. I realized where he's coming from, stuff like that. And Holden, the main character, is kind of misunderstood. And I feel like some people get it, some people don't. And if you get it, you love the book. And if you don't, you're like, what's so great about this book? So I got it. I love the book. I actually have 2 different copies because whenever I find a book that I really, really love that's, like a popular book or will have a lot of copies, I tend to collect them. Like Les Mis, I have 4 different copies, but I only have 2 of Catcher in the Rye. But I love this. And look at the cover. I love the cover. It's the same as the back cover. Oh my gosh, it's the exact same as the back cover. Okay, then I have 3 more, and these next 2 are by the same author. They are both Dan Brown novels. I have Angels and Demons and The Lost Symbol. Angels and Demons and The Lost Symbol are part of the Robert Langdon series, and The Da Vinci Code should go right in the middle, but I hate that book, so we're not putting that one in there. Angels and Demons was the first one I read. I did read it before The Da Vinci Code because somebody in my family was reading The Da Vinci Code, and we had Angels and Demons, so I picked it up because somebody said it was good, and I read it, and I loved it. I've already reread this. The first time I read it in like 3 days. The second time I read it in like 2, because even though I reread it, it's still a page turner, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Because with books like this, actually with most books, I tend to wait a while before I reread them, even if I really love them, because I don't want to remember every single detail from when I first read it. So, like this, it was about a year or 2. Usually I don't wait that long, but it was about a year or 2 in between when I first read this and when I reread this. And the reason I reread it is because I bought this one. I had been waiting for this book ever since I heard it was coming out. And then when it finally did come out and it was too expensive, I was really sad, so I saved up and finally found it in mass market paperback, because that's what Angels and Demons and my Da Vinci Code are. And I was really excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I have enough money for this, I'm gonna get it. I read it in 2 or 3 days. This is an amazing book. I have heard people say they don't like it. It's really kind of a preference book. It's not exactly adventure in, say, the book, or Lord of the Rings is kind of like an adventure. It's also sci-fi, but it's kind of like adventure. He goes and he has to get rid of this ring, and it goes on through 3 books, This is not that. This is, he has to figure out a code and save somebody. It's the same preference for the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. Same kind of thing, just different people and a different code with different people associated with the code. So this one doesn't necessarily have to do with the church as much as Angels and Demons, and especially the Da Vinci Code. Angels and Demons was kind of more of a more of an art kind of thing. The Da Vinci Code was heavily religious. This is not so much. This also takes place in the U.S., hence the Capitol building in front. So that's what also intrigued me to get it, because even though a lot of books are set in the U.S., not a lot of them tend to be set in modern times in big cities. The Time Traveler's Wife is set in Chicago, and it's mostly modern. I think it's supposed to be mid-90s or something. And I recognize a lot of places in that book, but I don't tend to come across those a lot. Usually, if it's love stories, it's in a small town like Maine or something. And if it's adventure, it's usually across the ocean, Europe or something. But this is set in DC. And I really liked this book. I really liked how he came across the codes, how he had to solve them. I like stuff like that, so that's why I love this book. And last but not least, The 12 Dancing Princesses by Ruth Sanderson. This book I had when I was little, and I loved it. I read this thing to pieces. A lot of people really like Clifford, a lot of people really like Curious George, and don't get me wrong, I loved those books, but this book, this was mine. And I have 2 brothers and no sisters, so they never read this book, so this book was literally all mine. And I love the pictures in it, because they're oil paintings. Look at that. And I loved looking at the costumes, because I was definitely one of those girls who loved to dress up in ball gowns and fancy clothes. Look at that. I would go through and pick out which dresses I would love to wear, and which hats and stuff like that. But I loved that book. It made me feel like a princess, and so that has to go in this little best books of all time, or favorite books of all time, because I love it. But yeah, so those are my top 10 favorite books of all time. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you there. Bye.